All right, folks, when you're heading out on the trail, there's some basic safety things you need to keep in mind to prevent getting lost in the woods, and some basic safety things you should do in case you get lost in the woods. We're going to talk about that today. Stay with me now. Hey everybody, welcome back to Prepping with Sarge. Today I am going to hit a little trail that I know well. I have no danger of getting lost today, but old Sarge has gotten lost in the woods before, and any experienced hiker, no matter how good their experience is at risk of pretty good chance that at some point they are going to get a little bit off place from where they thought they were. It's happened to me 3 times that I can remember, twice in the forest and once in the desert. Now I'll talk about the desert on a different video because that's a whole different ball game, getting lost in the desert. And you may think, how the heck do you get lost in the desert? It's pretty wide open. Well, actually, in a lot of, unless it's like a sands desert, there's actually a lot of scrub brush that can go higher than your head, and you can lose visibility for a short period of time. So there's trails out in the desert too that can throw you off. But for today, let's stick to lost in the woods. So a couple things to keep in mind. Number one way to survive getting lost in the woods is to not get lost at all, right? So how do we do that? Well, number one, review your maps before you go. Tell somebody where you're going, especially if it's a new trail that you've never been on before, and check your bearing before you get out on the trail, right? Like, so you may think you know where north, east, south, west is, but you know what? Before you head in, just kind of check your bearing. Even if you're not a master of orienteering, having a general idea of what direction you're going can save you a lot of trouble down the road. So I told you that I got lost a couple times in the forest, and both of those times pretty far off course. Now you may think, if you're not a big hiker, you might not realize that there's a lot of places in the United States, and even outside, of course outside the United States as well, where the forest can be bigger than even like the size of Rhode Island, the state of Rhode Island. There are state forests and national forests that are bigger than the state of Rhode Island. So you can get out there, miss a trail marker. Over time, nature kind of covers up some of these trails if they're not well maintained. Trail markers can fade if they're not regularly, if there's not regular maintenance on them. So it's more easy than you think, especially if you don't know that trail well. And both of the times that I can remember right now where it was a forest trail and I got misplaced by several miles actually, was one thing that had happened one common thing that I noticed for both of those was that I was hiking with other people. Okay, and the mistake there, I think for me, was that, and I think this is kind of that groupthink thing, or a variation of groupthink, is that you're trusting that the other person is knowing where they're going. Right? You have to be your own compass. You have to be your own map. You have to not trust that the other person knows where they're going. And that was the mistake in both of those cases. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you're hiking with somebody else or a group of people, it's very easy to get distracted. And in both of the times that I got lost in the forest, that's exactly what happened. We got distracted. We were talking. We were having a good time. And the next thing you know, you're like, hey, this doesn't look right. I think we're off trail somehow. You try to backtrack, and it can get, when you're away from well-maintained areas, everything starts to look very, very similar, and it's easy. Now you can get misplaced really, really quickly, right? So if this happens to you, the first thing I want you to do is stop. Just stop, take a few breaths, calm down. The last thing you want to do is be moving while you're in panic mode. You're really prone to making bad decisions when that happens. Stop, take a deep breath, take a little drink of your water, gather your bearings, and try to rethink your steps a little bit, okay? And then the next thing I want you to do is assess, what are we looking at here? How much daylight do we have left? If it's, what kind of weather are you looking at? And if you don't think that you have enough time to get out, and this is the conundrum, you're going to be tempted to keep moving until you have no light left, and that could potentially be a mistake. If you don't think you're going to make it out or find your way back to the trail before you lose daylight, then your time is actually going to be better spent maybe getting a fire going or building a little makeshift shelter, whatever you can do while you still have light. The next thing I want you to keep in mind is that every experienced hiker should be traveling with some minimal survival kit with them, right? So as you can see, I've got my day pack with me. I've showed you this before. I've showed you what's in my survival kit. If you want to see that again, I'll put a link up here. And this is not my bug out bag. This is not my get home bag. This is just my day hiking bag, really. But there's enough in here, enough kit in here that I could easily survive through the night, or even 2 nights or 3 nights if I had to, with my skills on foraging and things like that, shelter building, plus what I've got in my pack. So at minimum, if you're not hitting a trail that you regularly know, you should be carrying at least some kind of survival kit. What's going to be in there? You're going to need a knife, a decent knife, not some cheap knife. Get something decent if you're going to get into this hobby. At least a couple different ways to start fire. I've got the Wazoo fire starter necklace here. I've got a Zippo in my pocket. And in my pack, I've got a couple fire starters and a magnifying glass. Right? So you want to have at least a couple different ways to start a fire. I strongly urge people to carry cordage with them. In my survival kit, I've shown you what I carry, which is a bright orange paracord. And so you're gonna have a way to start fire. You're gonna need some cordage. The reason I chose bright orange is because I can use that not only for shelter building, but that bright orange can also mark my way. So I know if I'm like, I've already been down this path, or I can maybe mark it to say, hey, this is where I am if people are looking for me. Again, you're gonna wanna let somebody know before you go, this is where I'm gonna be, this is when I'm starting my trail hike. I like to, if I'm using a new trail, or if I'm gonna be out for a long period of time, I carry a poncho in my day pack. I can make a shelter out of that, and I can also give myself some makeshift protection from the wind and the rain. So we got your cordage, you got a way to start a fire, you've got a knife, you've got a way to make a makeshift shelter. Of course, why not carry a cell phone? I know a lot of purists will say, well, what if it's an emergency or you're too far out, that's not gonna work. What if it does work, right? Like that's the easiest solution, is to be able to call and say, hey, this is where I entered the trail. Not sure where I am. This is what I'm seeing around me, right? And of course, in your cell phone, you can download on the App Store a free compass, right? So if you remember to make a bearing on your way into the trail and you've kept in the same general direction, you might be able to use that to find your way out. All right, so let's go through worst case scenario. You're stuck out there, you're losing light. You're probably gonna have to spend the night there. This is worst case scenario, right? Like you would have hopefully brought a little flashlight with you as well, but keep in mind that flashlight is probably not going to give you light the entire night through, so you're going to have to use it sparingly. You're going to have to get comfortable with a little bit of the darkness. Maybe you're going to get a fire started, and that's going to help a little bit. But when you get a fire going, one of the things that happens is like you have light maybe for like 20 feet around the fire, and then because your eyes are focused on that, you can't see what's beyond that, right? So in a way, it almost like you're getting a trade-off on that. Like you're not gonna be able to see far into the darkness if you run a fire. It just is what it is. But of course, it's gonna improve your morale. It might keep off, predator animals. Certainly gonna keep you warmer than if you did not. You have to kind of make that decision. And another pro for making a fire is like if people are looking for you, it's gonna be a lot easier for them to smell that and see that. All right, so you've survived the night. You made your little makeshift shelter. You made your little makeshift shelter. You had your fire going, and now the sun's coming up. Now it's time to start thinking about getting out of there, right? Well, if you really cannot find your bearings, you almost are going to be better off sometimes to just kind of stay put and start making signals. So how would I do that if it was me? I'd start making fires, 3 fires in a row, or 3 fires in a triangle formation. If I've got a firearm with me, 3 shots in like a boom, boom, boom. Wait 15 minutes, boom, boom, boom. 3 shots like that is a universal sign of a hunter in distress. So if there's anybody else in that area, they're gonna hear that for quite a distance. You should probably be carrying a whistle in your survival kit, because after a while, if you're yelling help or something like that, your voice is going to start to get hoarse and you're going to get dried out. So the whistle will prolong your ability to signal for help. Signal mirrors, you need to practice with those. They are fun, and it's also going to depend on line of sight, right? Like, so in the forest where I am right now, signal mirror is not going to do me a whole lot of good. In the desert, maybe, right? You want to, if you hear vehicles or you hear planes or helicopters, that's when you really want to get your movement going, because from far away, movement and bright colors are a lot easier to see, right? So that's why I carry some bright colors in my hiking kit with my paracord. Sometimes I'll stick an orange shirt in there so I can like wave that around. I also throw little glow sticks, chem lights in there, which you can attach to some paracord at nighttime. If you spin that around, it can be seen pretty far away. If I've got access to an open field, I might mark a giant SOS in the ground with like dead tree limbs, things like that. So the idea is with that kind of thing, if you're gonna have to have somebody rescue you instead of you being able to extricate yourself, then you're gonna wanna make yourself as visible as possible, right? And so I'd create as many signals close to where I'm camping as possible, all right? All right, so let's end with my little story here of one of the times that I got lost. So this was when I was in Boy Scouts. My best friend and I actually we decided we were gonna hike back to camp from the swimming hole and take a different route. And so along the way, we took a path that we had never taken before, but we thought it was going in the general direction back to our camp. And that was our first mistake. Now, along the way, we're kind of talking, we're having a good time. We're teenagers at this point, we're talking about girls and, we're not really paying attention. And it was probably about 45 minutes into that we were like, we should have come out at the camp now, something's wrong. So we tried to circle our way back and figure out where we had missed our turn or like what we did wrong, and everything started looking the same, right? So this is where, you might get into a little bit of that panic, but fortunately we did not. Both of us are, at that time we were both fairly experienced with wilderness survival skills and both had spent the night out in the woods by ourselves and that kind of thing. So still no reason to panic, but we knew that the camp, the scoutmasters would be a little bit worried, like, oh Lord, what are those two knuckleheads up to, right? That's probably what they were thinking. So we decided, because we still had plenty of daylight, we were gonna keep moving in one direction, try to find a road, because we were in a state forest, but we also knew that there was a road all around there, right? Like, so if you keep going in any direction, eventually you're gonna hit a road. So we started doing that, and we did eventually find a road, and then there was no signs near us, so we had to pick a direction, left or right. We picked a direction, kept moving, knowing eventually now that we're on a road, eventually we're gonna hit a building, we're gonna hit some civilization. Well, we came out near one of the state penitentiaries, and maybe I'll show you this sometime on another video. I'll show you on the map exactly where we started and where we ended up. We were several miles off course, and so we were like, wow, of all the places, let's go up and ask see if we can call somebody or get a ride or whatever. So as we're going up there, there were some people in the yard, some residents of the penitentiary in the yard, catcalling us, teenage boys in our scout uniforms, catcalling us and whistling at us and whatnot, which was a little bit funny. And we got up there. Of course, the corrections officers were like, what are you two idiots doing out here? How did you get here? And we explained that we had hiked there. And he's like, why? Like, well, it certainly wasn't intentional. So this was before cell phones and all that stuff. They were kind enough to give us a ride back, at which point we were in big trouble with the scoutmasters and the camp in general for what we had done. But we got a great story out of it, and we survived. And yeah, that's the thing. Like, just don't panic, right? Don't panic. Most people who get lost in the wilderness do survive. But the more you panic, the more you give into that, something's I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. The more likely you are to make some bad decisions. And that's when your safety could really be in jeopardy. All right. Hey, if you found this helpful at all, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I'd love to have you subscribe if you're new to the channel. Drop videos twice a week. Usually on Tuesdays, I drop a skill-based video or a product review. And usually on Fridays, I go live for the Friday Night Prepper pre-party show. Really appreciate you. Thank you for watching the whole video. Keep planting your seeds, keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.